Lo, you are about to embark upon the truth. I shall take you a step further into the world of true right knowledge, right wisdom, and the right understanding. For many years, Humims have pondered about the evolution of the inhabitants of the planet Earth. The question was in the minds of humans as to where each species and each life form evolved. You must learn of the evolutionary process. This will give you great knowledge of that which is right and exact, and right wisdom, right understanding, and sound right reasoning, of how and where 9 ether versus the 6 ether came about. Now, let us begin by learning of a time before, when a large craft from the Ninga fleet, thought to be a meteorite, crashed into the planet, shearing off the lower half of it. That was 24 billion years ago. This caused the development of Earth's shape and form as you know it today, bringing with it new kinds of life forms, some to make residence beneath the seas of what is called the Bimini today, where the great empire of the reptilians thrive, even unto this day. This empire is located in the Atlantic Ocean, in the area called the Bermuda Triangle or Angel's Triangle. Other life forms took shape on the surface of the Earth. It was gases and electrical sparks that formed the complex molecules from the simple ones, originally planted here some 76 trillion years ago. For billions of years, life continued to consist of no more than simple cells, yet with intelligence. As time passed, more complicated cells were born, and these gradually became even more complicated cells, which were giving birth until they eventually combined with each other or married to give birth to even larger organisms. The more complicated an organism, such as algae, the larger its brain is, thus the more intelligent it became. These living organisms evolved out of the water, through the ammonia and onto the soil. Millions of years after that, the next group of animals developed called metazoans. Their bodies were composed of specialized cells, grouped to form tissues, organs and systems, much like the animals of today. These animals multiplied and diversified, and over a period of 19 million years evolved into man, many types of animals and dragons, called terrible lizards or simply dinosaurs. This was the first evolution of life on the planet Earth. These inhabitants went through many changes, such as the Ice Age glaciers, volcanoes and earthquakes. During this time there were also problems with the dinosaurs and humans. The evolution of the dinosaurs and humans were in balance, to the point that the dinosaurs were much bigger than the humans, and they were killing them off. These humans were of the Homo erectus species. They had 6 ether hair covering most of their bodies. Dinosaurs are classified or divided into separate groups. One being the Saurischia, lizard hips. He's a 4-legged plant-eating dinosaur and can also be a meat-eating dinosaur. The other being Ornithischia, bird hip. This group of dinosaurs is your 2-legged plant eaters and all of your armored dinosaurs. In your Ornithischia, the forward pointing bone has swung around in order that it can point backwards and forwards. And Saurischia have hip bones that are found within reptiles. These bones point in different directions. These two names are in reference to the arrangement of 3 bones of the pelvis. In the Saurischia, these bones were arranged similar to that of modern crocodiles and lizards. These are your Tanine, while the pelvis of the Ornithischia was bird-like. Therefore, humans developed from a 1-cell animal, which developed into a water creature, and these humans are tadpoles or reptilians for the first 3 months in their mother's womb. This is why humans still have webbed hands, gills and scales. In their own evolution, with the help of their mammalian parent, they become the root seed of mammals, later called the human being. In its primeval state, they climbed upon the landmass and developed into land creatures, and then onto genus Homo, onto Homo erectus. And these land creatures that were once tadpoles or reptilians grew while in their mother's womb. From 3 months plus 3 months more, during this period they were connected to an umbilical cord, umbilicus or navel, that is on the abdomen of the fetus and is connected to the placenta. This mark on the surface of the abdomen of mammals who once dwelt in a marina or water is where the umbilical cord, also called umbilicus, was. The central point or middle is attached during gestation. The very word navel comes from the Middle English word nephala and is the same as the Aramaic Hebrew word nephala, nephilim, to fall down, which is the same word. It's in the phonetics of the language. It is a clear picture in these days and times that the words navy, navel, naval and marina tie in. This is a confession that man was a tadpole and was considered a sea creature. Life forms that evolved from the sea were water vertebrates. They did not appear until 500 million years ago, and land vertebrates followed about 100 million years ago. About 225 million years ago, there were fish in the waters as well as sea plants. Most amphibians had made the transition from dry water to land. The plants on the dry land attracted the amphibians to evolve into reptiles. The dolphin as a whale went from the stars to this planet in the sea, then onto land, then back into the sea as a whale. Crocodiles are the remnant of that evolutionary phase also. From 225 million years ago to 65 million years ago, which is the period of time often referred to as the dinosaur age, evolved two main lines of egg-laying reptiles. Those who could fly, which evolved into birds, like the pterodactyls from the Greek pteron, meaning feather, wing, and dactylus, from the Greek for finger, and those who roamed and dominated the earth as dinosaurs, called the Tyrannosaurus rex, tyrant reptile, or terrible lizards. These reptiles evolved alongside with a variety of amphibians and water lizards, away from the oceans and their water life, which is full of activity. When humans came out of the water, your evolution jumped billions of years. When humans crawled on the land, they were in the form of what looked like crocodiles. If you examine the back or the spinal columns of humans, you can see knots up and down the spinal column. Millions of years ago, it was a fin. This fin or sail was used to conduct heat and regulate heat, and the body had to mutate. Behemoth, mankind to this day, still has it at the end of his spinal column, an extension called a coccyx, that is a tail, as well as wings under the arms and webbed hands. This human developed from what you would call a dinosaur today. This dinosaur was called Dimetrodon. It got its name from it, having that which is unique, that being two sets of teeth. No other animal had two sets of teeth. The Dimetrodon lived about 60 to 300 million years ago, which means that it lived at the end of the Paleozoic era. Dimetrodon was a large meat-eating reptile which measured some 10 to 12 feet from nose to tail and 5 feet in height, which explains why many human beings have a craving for flesh. When Dimetrodon, who was of the Paleozoic era, ruled, this deadly creature roamed the valley before the dinosaurs of the Mesozoic era. The Dimetrodon was the first to inhabit the land. It was a warm-blooded reptile. Dimetrodon is a deadly reptile known for the enormous sail on its back. This sail was used for the purpose of regulating body heat. By turning the sail to face the sun, the Dimetrodon was able to warm up much more quickly, in about less than an hour, which allowed the Dimetrodon more time to hunt. A reptile can't stay active if it's too hot. However, without heat, reptiles become more sluggish still and helpless. But mammals can regulate the heat of their bodies because they are warm-blooded. Dimetrodon is not an ordinary reptile. The resemblance between humans and Dimetrodon was the teeth. Both humans and Dimetrodons have two sets of teeth which were incised as canines and different sized teeth behind the canines. These are only found on mammals. 360 million years before Dimetrodon, some creatures crawled out of the ocean, which were early amphibians. Within 20 million years they split into two groups. One became the aggressive species, which were the diapsid. The other was the passive synapsid. They began to compete for supremacy. From generation to generation, each line improved and perfected itself. When the diapsids and the synapsids moved further up the evolutionary chain, they began to split in different directions. The diapsids had two holes, two openings in the skulls, which evolved into all modern reptiles, such as turtles, crocodiles, alligators, lizards, etc. While the synapsids had a single hole in the back of their skulls, which evolved into all proto-mammals, such as Dimetrodon, armadillo, whales, dogs, cows, humans, and all other mammals that evolved in this line. The two holes allowed the skull not to squeeze the brain. Proto-mammals were changing from a reptilian to mammalian, and from a mammal-like reptile posture. They took possession of the land masses for 50 million years and dominated the planet. Dimetrodon's first descendants were hot-blooded. This was a detour in evolution. They took steps from reptilian to mammalian. The dinosaurs started to take control, and the proto-mammals began to disappear in the Triassic period 245 million years ago. Thus, larger animals began a long conquest and pushed proto-mammals to the brink of extinction. The lizard-like Orpheacidon and warm-blooded Dimetrodon reduced in size. Proto-mammals had to adapt to nightlife, becoming nocturnal hunters. As proto-mammals began to mutate and evolute out of its present state, the size of their brains grew. During this time, extraterrestrials had leaped in and started to breed also. Although life evolved from the seas, all of it did not originate here. Some life forms crashed into the seas of Tiamat from the Maldek incident, particularly from the Ninga star fleet, they being from another star constellation, and they lived under the seas of Tiamat. These other life forms were beings known as the Troglodytes or Maldekians, which crashed down on Tiamat. One of the 4 Maldekian crafts, called the West Wind, crashed into the center of the planet Earth. These beings lived in the seas of Tiamat Earth for millions of years. Their home base is under the Bermuda Triangle. They set up kingdoms called Yams under the waters. The Maldekians developed into intelligent humanoids by abducting and mixing their seeds with humans. This is where the reptilian-like dinosaurs came from, while on the other hand, there was another set of extraterrestrial beings like the Greys, from which some of the dinosaurs evolved from. These Greys came from the star constellation Orion, the star constellation of Arcturus and Pleiades. Meanwhile, the reptilians ruled them from Rigel and Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, Mintaka, Al-Nilam and Al-Natak in the Orion star constellation, and Auriga in the Capella star formation. They were all in fear of the aggressive insect-type extraterrestrials from Andromeda, many of which came down to this planet Earth. One of the common species of dinosaurs that evolved from the Ramadian seed of Greys was the Hypsilophodon, who came out of the Jurassic period. They were called Hypsilophodon because of their high-ridged teeth. The Hypsilophodon were herbivores. They only ate off the plants and fruits, extracting the needed chlorine. The most common dinosaur that evolved from the reptilians were the Tyrannosaurus rex, meaning tyrant reptile or terrible lizard. It is 50 feet long and 20 feet in height and weighed 7 tons. It was one of the largest carnivores that ever walked the planet Tiamat Earth. This creature is known to be the king of the meat-eaters. The Tyrannosaurus rex came out of the reptilians, making them part dinosaur and part reptilian. The evolutionary humming. Alongside the dinosaurs you had the evolutionary hummings. Amongst the different species of evolutionary humming, you have the Australopithecines. There were 2 forms of Australopithecines that could walk and were erect. Their brain was 1/3 the size of a modern human's brain. The smaller one stood about 4 feet tall and weighed about 50 to 120 pounds. This was your original Pygmy, Kishite and Hawilowite tribe, which your mother Hawa Eve came from. They had 9 ether hair. The larger ones were 7 feet and had weighed 222 to 250 pounds. This was your original Watusi Kuthite tribe, which Cadmon Adam came from. They had 8 ether hair. They were the giants in the earth. All other humans had 6 ether hair, as other animals of this planet Earth. 9 ether hair is a symbol of an extraterrestrial being. All animals and humans on this planet have 6 ether hair. Cadmon Zakar, also known as Adam, was also a mixture of Hindu, the original black man, mixed with a Shaggy, which is another set of beings that were coming to Earth from the Sirius star constellation. These Shaggies were not your hairy Bigfoot creatures. They came from the planet Aduma and the constellation of Sirius. Along with these Shaggies came the Greys, also from the same star constellation, from Zeta Reticuli, called Sirius B for biological entity. The Ramadians, called Greys, came from Pleiades and Arcturus. When Nibiru passed Sirius B, its presence drained the energy from the sun and caused the great star Sirius B to collapse. Sirius A had 2 planets. The Narians, an independent species of Grey, were on one planet and the Nomos reptilians were on the other. Both planets rotated around Sirius A. So when their sun died, the Narians followed Nibiru through the Milky Way. While in pursuit, these beings, the reptilians, chased the Greys, the Ramadians, who also lived on Sirius, because they wanted to rule over them and use them as slaves. Some of the Ramadians came down to the planet Earth from Zeta Reticuli. Both beings, the Nomos and the Ramadians, took residence on the planet Tiamat Earth. When the reptilians came, they tried to appeal to the Maldekians, troglodytes, that were living in the seas from the crashdown that happened years ago because they were of their seed. However, these Maldekians who lived beneath the seas of the planet Earth had a very violent nature. The reptilians had to take residence in caverns beneath the surface of the Earth or in deep swamp areas in the planet Earth. They set out to conquer the Ramadians and take rule over them because of their passive nature. Some of the Ramadians came down to the planet Earth from Zeta Reticuli. They went directly to the original Pygmy tribe of Bushmen in South Africa, who were the Kishites, Kushites and Hawilloites. They lived amongst these beings, and the Ramadians taught this tribe of the Anunnaki and of the beings from the star Sirius. The Kushites and Hawilloites became a mixture of these supernatural beings or extraterrestrial beings. These supernatural beings are the Ramadian Greys that existed in the Nile River of the barren and rocky land of Nuba. They were associated with peace and harmony only. The Pygmies called these supernatural beings Baha Malakat, or river angels. They lived in underwater castles. They were associated with 4 categories of human preoccupations: fertility, cultivation, marriage and health. Then, on the arrival of the reptilians, who in pursuit of the Ramadians also crashed down amongst the Dogon tribes and began to teach them by the shadow hours and would retreat to the sea by day. They told them they were the Nomos, who had come to guide them, if they would tell them the location of the secret caves that the agreeable Ramadians dwelt in. These Bushmen, the Kishites, Kushites, were of the family of Nekeba, including the Dogon tribe. Today they live in the deserts of the Kalahari, in what is called Africa today. The Nomos reptilians were also called the Dogri, or the Doga by the Nubians. They were also referred to as ugly water beings. The reptilians can be seen in the daylight, however they would roam mostly in the deep dark swamps and the marshlands. They took on different forms to appeal to the humans. They had a very violent nature, which horrified most of these people. They always came out at the shadow hour and hung around the date trees. The Dogri enjoyed eating the dates of the trees. They also came onto land during the shadow hours to teach and mix with the Dogons. They would kidnap the virgins and rape them to implant their seed. It became a ritual to offer virgins in order to prevent the bloodshed. A negotiator was elected called a Hogan. Every 60 years they would seek these virgins. This in turn led to female child sacrifice rituals to these serpent people, becoming willing blood sacrifices to what became known as Ha-Satan, the head of the reptilian tribes, also called Shaitan, becoming a common practice and like an honor and a way to appease these malevolent beings. The Dogons of Mali in West Africa teach and speak of what they have been taught by these 2 tribes of extraterrestrials to this very day. The reptilians told the people of Nubia that they were lawgivers, and the people called Nomos, which is summoned, Nasamun, poison, in Syriac Arabic as found in the Quran. They taught them about calculations and about the Sagai, a 60-year period. They also lived in underwater cities linked to caverns deep in the earth. You have 8 caverns occupied by extraterrestrials. This does not include Agartha. The ruling species of the underworld are many. Dawanis called gnomes, which stand 3 feet tall and have porcupine-like quills protruding from their bodies. They live near lava and other volcanic environments. They live off insects and worms. They are extremely intelligent, taking pride in mastering all of the science and literature of the surface people. I once met a Dawani who could recite all of William Shakespeare. He knew the best of wines from the 17th century up. He could discuss everything from the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Torah, onto Sigmund Freud and the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. They are extremely friendly and are of no threat to human beings, yet they have no interest in coexisting with human beings on the surface, who they see as killers without purpose. Next there's the Samin, Dero, called Ganesh by the Hindus, who are born by hatching from eggs that are 4 to 6 feet in diameter. They grow to 7 feet and are extremely obese, having 2 stomachs, and they chew off the cud. The Samin Dero have no apparent fingernails or toenails, nipples or navel, or rectum. They regurgitate their food. Their eyes are light blue. They have blonde eyebrows and pinkish grey-coloured skin, much like the corpse of a Kakadu. Their home was in caverns beneath Turkey, having not been exposed to the inner or outer sun. They have no teeth, but their mouth appears to be full of a gummy, slimy substance. They are nocturnal and hear extremely well. They're not very peaceful and have a great dislike for humans. They are very human in appearance, yet far from it. They have a long trunk-like nose, much like an elephant. They contend that the planet Earth was theirs originally, and it will be theirs again one day. The Samin Dero are constantly in conflict with the Fulwani, who hold the same faith that they were both the original owners of the planet Earth. While on the surface, on the other side of the Red Sea, eastward of Eden in Chaldea, the demon beings Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma were coming back and forth to the Earth from their star constellation Procyon, the planet Nirvana, for thousands of Earth years. They are savage animals and are also called Chaldea, meaning demons. They became known as the original Asiatics. While all of this was going on, there were different kinds of evolutionary humans, human and behemoth, that were living on this planet Earth in the same era also. You had genus Homo, the Australopithecus. The Australopithecus was a creature who lived many millions of years ago. They differed chiefly in size. There were two types of Australopithecus. The first form was the ones who stood 4 feet and could walk erect. The second form was the Java man, who was called Pithecanthropus, meaning monkey man or ape man. The other species was Paranthropus. Then you had other types like the Neanderthal, who lived for 100,000 years and then disappeared. Then there is the Cro-Magnon, who is said to have roamed Europe 400,000 years ago, including Homo erectus and many other species in between. The Peking man also belonged to this species, who was here 500,000 years ago, long thought to be along the migration of modern man. The Peking man was a type of prehistoric man who lived about 375,000 years ago in what is now northern China. Members of the species Homo erectus, erect man, stood about 5 feet tall or 150 centimeters tall. They had a brain about twice the size of an Australopithecines. Most of these species of evolutionary man came from the ape family. Among the different species of ape man, you have the black-haired La. This is where you get the word lord or master from. Lars, plural for La, were recognized for their intelligence. These Lars were the head monkeys or spiritual monkeys well known. This is where the word monks come from. When the Anunnaki chose to breed by gene splicing through Gestu, one of the Anunnaki, and Ninti to breed the first Mami here, they chose to breed with the Lars because of their high intelligence. The red-haired orangutan was also a very intelligent ape, and the brown and black-haired chimpanzees had the best brains on the scales of evolution. The orangutan is a large rare ape. Some males have an arm spread of 7.5 feet, one of the largest of all the apes. The orangutan's arms reach to its ankles when it stands. The orangutans live in trees and rarely comes down to the ground. It moves through the forest by climbing from branch to branch. The orangutan feeds off fruit and leaves. The other type was the chimpanzee. The chimpanzee has the intellect of a 4-year-old child and can be brought up to the level of a 7 or 8-year-old. The chimpanzee is one of the most intelligent animals and resembles human beings more than any other animal. They usually walk on all fours and can stand erect when excited or trying to see over tall grass. The orangutans were used by certain beings to breed with. They used the species known as the baboon, the dog-like monkey, and the orangutans together. The baboon is a large monkey. It has a large head, long sharp teeth, and a muzzle much like that of a dog. A baboon's arms are about as long as its legs. Some baboons have short stumpy tails, but others have tails more than 2 feet long. The baboons are part hyena, jackal and monkey. The breeding with them resulted in your behemoth-type carnivores called mankind, one of the many species of Caucasus. You have the red-haired, light green-eyed, yellow-haired, blue-eyed, brown-haired, grey-eyed and many others. While on the other hand, certain beings use the chimpanzee and the gibbon, which are an offshoot of the Lars for breeding. There are several species of gibbons. They all have long arms and no tail. Gibbons travel through the tops of trees in small groups. A group usually consists of a male, a female, and 1 or 2 young. The chimpanzees and gibbons evolved into humans, and they became your Nubans, the original pygmy tribe. Their woolly hair comes from the supreme beings with 24 strands of genes coated in melanin. These are your original Anunnaki Alahum, the guardians of the Nubans with 9 ether, who in skin color were olive, as green as the greenest of olives. The gibbon is the smallest of the apes. It also ranges over a wider area than the other members of the ape family, the chimpanzee, gorilla and orangutan. The dog race were called the behemoth. They are the beast. They were part orangutan and part baboon, called the beast of the field. They were the fierce ones. Only some of these apes were used for breeding, and on the other hand, some of these beings weren't touched at all. They just kept on evolving. They all have 6 ether as well as all other animals on the planet Earth. While all of this was going on, the larger meat-eating dinosaurs were eating and destroying everything. The early hominids were dying out, and proto-mammals were at the brink of extinction, so the elders thought it was a great idea to destroy the planet and replenish it again. Then a great extinction hit 17,250,000 years ago. The second big meteorite shower hit the planet Earth 2,250,000 years ago. Most of the prehistoric men and dinosaurs were destroyed. The surviving tribes were the Pygmies, the Watusis and the Hindus. The Pygmies, who had mixed with the agreeable Ramadians, and the Watusi, who mixed with the disagreeable reptilians, were led to shelters beneath the earth. Some went behind waterfalls and in caves and caverns of the planet Earth to survive, while the Hindu tribe went back to their planet called Nirvana in the Canis Minor constellation Procyon. The story of humans we now know, that tells of groups of mammals called primates, takes us back some 45 or 50 million years, when a common ancestor of monkeys, apes and humans appeared in Africa. 25 or 30 million years later, that is how slowly the wheels of evolution turn, a precursor of the great apes branched off the primate line. In the 1920s, fossils of this early ape proconsul were found by chance on an island in Lake Victoria. Besides proconsul fossils, they also discovered in the area remains of Ramapithecus, the first erect ape or man-like primate. It was some 14 million years old, some 8 or 10 million years up the evolutionary tree from proconsul. The richest fossil finds have been in Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, near Lake Rudolph, renamed Lake Turkana in Kenya, and in the Afar province of Ethiopia. A Neanderthal skull was found near the Nile in Egypt, which dated back 80,000 years old. Because a person's DNA keeps getting mixed by the genes of the generational fathers, comparison of the DNA in the nucleus of the cell, which comes half from the mother and half from the father, do not work well after several generations. It was discovered that in addition to the DNA in the cell's nucleus, some DNA exists in the mother cell, but outside the nucleus in bodies called mitochondria. This DNA does not get mixed with the father's DNA. Instead, it is passed on unaltered from mother to daughter to granddaughter, and so on through the generations. Thus it is perfect to trace ancestral relations. This discovery by Douglas Wallace of Emory University in the 1980s led him to compare this mitochondria of about 800 women. The surprising conclusion, which he announced at a scientific conference in July 1986, was that the mitochondria of all of them appeared to be so similar that these women must have all descended from a single female ancestor. The research was picked up by Wesley Brown of the University of Michigan, who suggested that by determining the rate of natural mutation of mitochondria, the length of time that had passed since this common ancestor was alive could be calculated. Comparing the mitochondria of 21 women from diverse geographical and racial backgrounds, he came to the conclusion that they owed their origin to a single mitochondrial Eve, who lived in Africa about 300,000 and 180,000 years ago. This led to the search for Eve. Rebecca Cann of the University of California at Berkeley had obtained the placentas of 147 women of different races and geographical backgrounds who gave birth at San Francisco hospitals. She extracted and compared their mitochondria. The conclusion was that they all had a common female ancestor who had lived between 300,000 and 150,000 years. The upper limit of 300,000 years, paleoanthropologists noted, coincided with the fossil evidence for the time Homo sapiens made his appearance. The mitochondrial DNA is only given from mother to daughter. The male species do not have any mitochondrial DNA. This is just further proof that the first person to walk on the planet Earth was a female.